Hey, what's up? Welcome to another episode of Tune Out with Tim. Today's song is Hysteria by Def Leppard from their record Hysteria in, I don't remember the year offhand, I'll put it in the YouTube comments. I actually have two favorite parts of this song. One is the pre-chorus, the other is the solo, both the solo itself, but particularly the rhythm guitar underneath the solo. I'm playing my Gretsch here. Deal with it. The guitar, when you play a guitar that's so you just play it through everything. And that's what I do. And a quick side story that I've always liked that was told both by Ted Nugent and Eddie Van Halen when they met in the 70s. Ted wanted to play through Ed's guitar and stack to think, am I going to sound like Eruption? And he actually semi-believed he would, but he realized he sounded exactly like Ted Nugent. And then when Ed would play Ted's guitar, he'd sound like Eddie Van Halen. So that to me is the lesson that it's not the gear, it's the feel, the technical facility, and the musician. And a good example of that is I submit to you, you could ask Paul McCartney to write or Billy Joel to write a beautiful piece of music with a kazoo, and they'd be able to do that. Okay, let's dive into Hysteria here. I'm going to play along with my Gretsch. Hopefully the volume is balanced okay. We'll find out. Play that forever. So meditative. Here comes my favorite. Oh boy, that's beautiful. The late Steve Clark and Phil Collins and Joe Elliott, the singer, composed that song. And what I want to say is, I always think of Goodbye Blue Sky, the verse lyric, or the verse melody. It's the same thing. And there's a moving bass in it. It's just so beautiful, where these guys, Phil and Steve and Joe, because maybe Joe Elliott wrote the original lyric. I've studied it a bit online. I've got more to do. But check it out. Listen to the note symmetry. And then a G. And then E minor add 9. And then back to G. And then back to D major. In the pre-chorus, this is a geeky point, but Mutt Lange, Def Leppard's engineer, producer, had the guitarists play that chord progression one note at a time. So instead of going, they literally went. One note at a time, and they stacked all the notes, so it sounds otherworldly. There's actually a couple elements of the song that are really hard to duplicate live. they do some weird pitch bending stuff as well at the end of the chorus when it goes, hysteria, when you're near. It ends on this chord. And the vibrato is fantastic. Phil Collins with his vibrato on this song is so beautiful. And Mutt Lange contributed a lot of those warbling effects. But anyway, the net effect of the guitarists doing one at a time is that when you put it together, it hits you in a different way, very different from when you play it live. It's a beautiful progression, but it sounds so different. Listen to it again and tell me if it sounds different. Think in terms of the attack. The fact that when you're strumming, if I go in slow motion, you know, but when they're all coming in unison like that, it's a different effect. And then I love, he throws in that G there. There's this theme of, how can I put it? I mean, my music theory, again, caps at a certain level. But there is tension and release all over this song. That's why this song, to me, is one of the most sensual, and dare I say, erotic rock songs that I can think of in my life. The build-up, the tension, the release, you really get the explosion, the climax, as it were, in the solo. So let's proceed here. I'm going to turn it down a little because I'm in an apartment and I don't want to get in trouble. I'm actually very respectful of my neighbors. I'm not kidding. I really am. It wasn't too loud originally. I wouldn't do that. Now there's a lot of other guitars. They've got a distorted electric, a couple of them over the top adding fills. That was a beautiful thing to record, but then the guys are like, how are we going to do this live, you know? And the chorus, it's different from a lot of pop songs. It's unexpected. When I first learned the song, the verse with the bass moving, and then here it's actually E minor to C major to D major. That's all it is. Now listen to this chord. Listen. Wow. Here comes the solo. I'm not going to be able to do it justice with this tone though. First of all, it's a key shift. It's in A instead of D. Now I want you to listen. Listen to the solo and listen underneath it. Chills around my neck, down my shoulders and back. Amazing. I don't know if I can even get a dirty sound. I'm going to try to. Trying to get a dirty sound on a Gretsch is kind of funny in a way. Let's see if I crank the gain. When all else fails, crank the gain. I'm going to try the solo. I mean, I got a whack tone. It's definitely not. Fun fact, if you are a musician, Phil Collins was a big fan of Tom Scholz's Rockman gear, and he used the Rockman X100 almost like a Walkman, but you plug your guitar into it, and basically it makes you sound like Boston. I had one in high school. Who wants to sound like Boston? I mean, Tom Scholz is Boston, and he owns that sound. But Phil Collins did a good job of adapting the Rockman to make it his sound. No doubt about that. like I said, I'm going to try to play along with that solo because I want to call out its beauty, as well as, let me say, first of all, that rhythm in the rhythm in the solo. I saw that when they perform it live, Joe Elliott will actually whip out a portable Steinberger guitar, and he'll rock the A and the D to hold down the rhythm, because the solo is so complicated that it's a dual solo. It's a unison solo where the guys are playing mostly the same notes. Oftentimes, I think it's an octave apart. I sometimes wonder, does Joe really need to do that? But the solo sounds so otherworldly. There's a lot of sounds in here that, again, are really challenging to do live, especially without a whole room full of guitar players. And again, it comes back, I think, about the Beatles when they intentionally went into the studio assuming that they would never play any of those songs live again, you know. In this case, Def Leppard absolutely knew they were going to play the songs live. They just figured out the strategy beforehand, I'm convinced. So anyway, about the solo. It's haunting, haunting. I'm not going to get the sustain. Something like that. Now again, remember that when they jump to the solo section, it comes out of thin air. Bam! I mean, we're in D, and then we're down in A. And the screaming, that's Mutt Lange and his contribution to the song. And then when it comes out, you go... Can't be any more simpler than 1-4-5 blues, 1-4. And the solo, I've analyzed it. It's mainly just your traditional A major and A pentatonic major. But I don't know, it's the way those guys constructed it. I've got a lot more to think about in terms of looking at what Steve Clark plays in the solo versus what Phil. I think I'm playing Phil's line. But and the Now the thing about this, I've watched a few performances of Def Leppard playing the song live when Steve Clark was alive, and they didn't really nail the solo the way that I hoped they did. Again, it may be really, really difficult, because another thing about the solo is it relies on feel so deeply and pitch bending so precisely. And I've got to give those guys a lot of credit for being able to pull it off at all live, you know. Because I believe Phil's also got his hand on the whammy bar, so he's slurring a lot of these. Anyway. Because when they come into this A note, it's not as clean as I'm doing it when I'm going. It's like they slur into it. At least they did on the recording. Who knows? Maybe it took them a dozen takes or 120 takes. That is so sensual and erotic. Oh my God. Last thing I'll say is I want you to listen in the pre-chorus. It sounds like a G, because the whack note, what I call the whack note, it's that G. And I swear in the recording, it's actually a C add 9, but you can hear that D in there as well. And it's one of my favorite chords when I do that C add, but I include the G both in bass and up on top. It's a David Gilmour chord, at least that's what I call it. I think I've yacked about this enough, so let me unplug the instrument and give you the rest of your day back. I hope you found that enjoyable. Later.